Okay, Lizzie. So looking back through your riding record, which I did for a bit of research here, you definitely appear to have been very selective, and your on your horses and your sort of campaigns. Um, Quality over quantity. Would that be right?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of the yard I was in, so I rode out here and there for people, but mainly I was based at home. The expectation was that I would be at home for that job. So for me to have the rides, I needed to be full time at home. And that was fine because there was nowhere I was going to go that was going to give me the quality that I was going to get from home. So you had to make the decision. Actually, I always struggled with my weight. So I used to muck out 4 or 5 every morning. Big straw stables, so that was good. Kept my weight down. Used to do afternoon stables. Make sure you worked off lunch, all that kind of thing. So I was very much at home. I did, as I said, ride out for people occasionally here and there. If I was like travelling north for a ride, I'd stop the night before, ride out for someone and go north. But the problem was realistically the opportunities for spare rides are going to come at the weekends or your boxing days or whatever. And I was lucky enough to be riding at the first meeting, the premier meeting it'd be called nowadays. And so really it was actually quite difficult to get the rides because I wasn't available on the days when people had a lot of runners. And I kind of made my peace with that. Like that was fine. I didn't have a problem with that. Yeah, I'd have loved to have been riding, 50 winners a year and having, 400 rides. But that just wasn't what my career was. And I sort of described it as the time as like a bit of a boutique career. I was sort of like a Poundland Frankie Dettori because I wasn't having to go racing all the time. I still had to do a lot of driving, having been based in Devon, obviously. But actually, I was fitter, I was better, I was more in tune with the horses. When owners came, I was always there. And I did the graft, and I think it's just always made me feel really like appreciative that I made that decision because you can spread yourself too thinly and end up getting nowhere. So I rode a lot of very, very good horses, um, and I wasn't actually very good at riding bad horses, to be honest. I used to sort of press a button and nothing would happen. I'd go, oh, like, that's an issue. So I always knew mum's horse and Nick's mum's horses were going to be very fit. I'd schooled them all. I knew them inside out. I've always thought it gave me an edge, and yeah, I was blessed with the career I had. Considering that, as you say, I didn't actually even ride out my claim. I got to 73 winners.
And I'm going to say relatively, you were relatively unscathed
Yeah,
as far as injuries went,
yeah.
which I suppose you could have been if you'd ridden any horse that came along.
Well, yeah, there's always that. Like, you're totting up what's worth it. And it was never, to me, worth breaking a bone or being out of action and then unable to ride the horses that I'd put so much effort in with, just for the sake of riding, something for someone I'd never met before in a maiden hurdle somewhere else. What's the point in breaking my leg, falling off something I've never sat on before, when I've got a yard full of horses at home who may well be the next big thing that I need to be available for. So, yeah, the choice was pretty easy, to be honest.
Now, you retired from the saddle in 2020 to start a family, and you've stayed retired from the saddle. Did you ever see yourself returning to race riding at this point?
Yeah, I did, yeah. And to be honest with you, if I could wake up a stone and a half lighter, I would have been back.
But you still would now?
Yeah. But, I would have been, you know, 3 years ago. But that sort of wasn't what happened. And I'd always struggled with my weight, to be honest. And actually, I probably would have only come back to riding bumpers anyway. Mum doesn't have a lot of bumper horses, so it would have been a fairly quiet affair. But I always sort of thought, oh yeah, I'll come back. But actually, I kind of get my kicks from riding my breakers, which can be fairly hairy sometimes. Um, people always ask, "Oh, do you miss it?" Like, I miss it. Of course I miss it. Like, there's no way you couldn't miss it. And I never got to that point in my career where I was kind of finished. I think, some of the older guys who retire after having, 20-year career, they are done. No, they have nothing left they need to do. Whereas for me, there's still things I would have wanted to achieve. But time moves on. Some of the injuries that, we've had in racing over the last couple of years have been so bad. I've made my peace with not returning to race riding, to be honest.
Okay, but you've still been a regular on our screens and on our airwaves
Yeah,
with Racing TV and Talk Sport.
yeah,
So I assume you enjoy doing both of them.
yeah.
What's attracted you to broadcasting?
I don't know. I like race. I like racing. I like talking about racing. I like analysing racing. Talk Sport is great. It's given me the opportunity to work not just in jump racing, but actually at the best flat meetings in the summer, which has been a massive learning curve because, to be honest, I never watched flat racing. I used to go to Royal Ascot for one day every year and, enjoy myself, but not really for the horses. So that's been a massive learning curve. I've really enjoyed it. I really enjoy working in that. Like, Talk Sport's great. It's very relaxed, but actually gives you a huge amount of satisfaction if you've read a race right, and you can say, I think this horse is going to win, and then it does. Like, that's great. Like, everyone enjoys that. And racing TV, is obviously far more analytical than Talk Sport, but it's the same in terms of, I have to analyse the races, a lot of prep work. It gives me something to do, and it keeps my sort of foot in the door in that kind of realm, I suppose. I appreciate, I've had to improve a lot. When I started, I wasn't very good. Wasn't very good at talking, which is a bit of a surprise. I always said too much. So
Did they chuck you in the deep end? I mean, when you got offered these jobs or you applied for them, whichever you got them, is there any sort of training, or are you just, there you go then, Lizzie, crack
yeah,
on?
it was just off you go. Talk Sport, I think, probably was a big shock to the system because my first piece of work for them was Cheltenham Festival. So off I trot with my reams of homework I've done. And actually, it was sort of 3 minutes before the race, and a minute of analysis afterwards. You barely have time to go through all the runners. So that made me, that was a big surprise. I thought we'd be able to sort of trundle over it all day, but that was a bit of a shock. Whereas racing TV, you do have more time. I've done sort of more and more quality days for racing TV recently, and I've really enjoyed it. I was disappointed. I was supposed to do the Peterborough Chase this year at Huntingdon, and it was abandoned, and that would have been probably the biggest day that I'd done. But it's sort of baby steps, and I'm happy to take baby steps, to be honest, and just learn as I go along, because I think when you're looking at people who are really, really good, like your Nick Lux and your Lydia Hislops, it's such a massive gulf between like me and them, but they've been doing it for a really long time, and I'm like literally at the very beginning of that type of career, if that's what I want to do long term.
No, you're talking about it as if it's something that you want to do long term. We're here today. I've been watching you work this morning at Valentine's Bloodstock, which we'll talk about in the last part. So is the media career something that you think you could run parallel with this? And is it something, would you like to be sort of on the mainstream doing the sort of stuff like Nick Luck and Lydia Hislop?
I'm really happy with how much I do for them at the moment, which tends to be like the big meetings for Talk Sport, which is great, obviously, and a couple of days a month for Racing TV. I actually run a PR company as well, which is about representing jump jockeys or flat jockeys, but I've only got 2 jump jockeys, and trying to find opportunities for them to increase their profile, have a diverse sort of commercial opportunities or portfolio of diverse commercial partnerships and ambassador roles and that sort of thing. And also running social media accounts for them or on their behalf. So I've started that last August. So I've sort of only been doing that for under a year, and that's probably something that I do find that really, really fun. That's kind of exactly what I'd sort of thought I might end up doing. And thankfully, two jockeys were kind enough, this Harry Skelton and Sean Bowen, were kind enough to basically be my guinea pigs and see if I could get it to work. And it's been really interesting, and I hope they're happy with what they're getting, because I enjoyed doing it, and obviously two top quality jockeys. So yeah, I mean, when Harry rode 4 winners at Cheltenham, you know, as his PR agent, if you like, you know, it was just fantastic, and we'll be able to work off that further down the line. And I think it steps away from racing a little bit. It's something that I could probably diversify if I needed to or wanted to, and it kind of brings you sort of full circle back to the event management degree that I did at university, where I did sort of think I like working in sport, and you know, what shall I do? Event management seems a good thing, but PR is essentially marketing, really. It's just marketing people, and yeah, I really enjoy doing it.
That eluded me in my research. So I
Yeah, I
mean, this
haven't.
that's quite. I suppose these days that's quite another thing that jockeys got to think about, as well as riding their horses and all that stuff. It's probably important to have a social media presence, but then having the time to
Yeah,
is
and I
quite
think it's
important.
putting like the quality stuff up as well. I think, you know, you can kind of chuck photos up on Instagram and be like, oh, it's fine. But actually, you kind of have to figure out how you broaden your audience from just racing people to out the outside world. I think a lot of racing markets itself to racing. So take, for example, the jockeys who put up what rides they have that day at Redcar or Ripon. Like, that's fine, but someone who's not a racing fan but likes you is probably going to be, oh, why does this keep coming up every day? You're marketing that to racing fans, and what I'm trying to do is market jockeys to a wider audience. And yeah, you probably wouldn't have found anything in your research because I've kept it pretty quiet. I think I want to make sure the results are there before I start singing and dancing about it.